All right. Good morning, Doug. We're going to go through some viewer questions today. And yeah, I'll just jump right into it. First one is we're looking to escape EU and really considering Uruguay. However, following online what is happening in Uruguay, we have the impression that they are a copy paste of what is happening in Europe with their coming Pass Verde, which is the green pass, obligatory vaccination, green measures, etc. Does Doug still have the feeling that Uruguay is a valid alternative for escaping this great reset that's happening worldwide?
Yeah, I'm not sure there are any valid alternatives anywhere in the world, quite frankly. And Latin America's got some advantages, and Uruguay's got some advantages within Latin America. Small country, 3-4 million people at most, farming country. These are pluses, but look, Uruguay was also one of the first 3 socialist countries in the world, along incidentally with New Zealand and Sweden. They all became socialist with, well, or I should say welfare states at the same time. That would be more accurate than to say they're socialist. So what about Uruguay? Look, the problem with all these little countries is things can change on a dime at the next election. I mean, right now, Uruguay has a decent human being as the president. The last president was, was a dyed-in-the-wool Marxist who was a Tupamaro, which is one of these guys that used to, blow up police stations and rob banks during the 60s. So things change. Is it a good place to be? Yeah, I mean, it's next to the most desirable and developed place in Brazil. It's an open border between the two places, just across the river from Argentina and Buenos Aires. It's great. But look, you know more about this right now than I do, Matt. What are they doing with this green passport and the rest of this nonsense?
Well, I'll say I looked up the green pass, and because actually I hadn't heard that Uruguay was implementing this myself, but obviously I've been looking into this a lot lately, and so but seeing this question I looked, and the only things I could find about the green pass was they are trying to for travel purposes to Europe, they are trying to adopt the standards that Europe will accept so that they can open tourism and travel between Europe and Uruguay again. But there isn't any talk that I've seen of mandatory vaccines at all. There's not like any talk that I have seen anywhere. And I just talked to someone yesterday who's from Belgium, who's been living in Uruguay since 2011, I believe. He says compared to Europe, there's no question that he's very happy with the choice that he made or where he is right now. And I think that they are planning to open the borders to tourism first to people who are vaccinated. And I really think all the adoption is trying to meet these international protocols for international travel to Europe. So, I think the bottom line is that this sort of, if you buy into the idea that this is sort of a global effort, that people, and it does seem that lots of people are adopting these standards and they're getting draconian everywhere. It seems more, what was it Marco said the other day? Marco Witzer, who we spoke with earlier this week, who lived in Uruguay for a long time and who is now in Colombia. He said, he likes being in Colombia, but he admitted that it's a lot more tranquilo probably to be in Uruguay at this time. So there's no perfect place, but.
No, there's not. Well, a nice thing about Uruguay is that it's, at least in Punta del Este, it's sophisticated and very international. That's a big plus.
It's a really important piece. Yeah. I mean, because what if the world doesn't, what if it is, this isn't, some people think, for instance, that this is a mass genocide event. Okay. Some people believe that. I'm not sure I'm not going to say where I fall on that spectrum of belief, but I'll just say, what if we tend toward normalization of some kind? And you don't want to find yourself, I mean, I want to be personally in a place where I can meet and interact with interesting people, where there's still good amenities to offer, and that there's a trade-off between the risks and and the lifestyle. And I think that Uruguay is a pretty good mix, frankly, compared to many of the other places that are out there.
I agree. As opposed to staying here in the U.S., I'm pretty confident that if things get really hot and heavy around the world for one reason or another, they're not going to round up the usual suspects in Uruguay. They might very well do that here in the United States. They're especially unlikely to do that in Uruguay if you're out in the middle of a big farm. And yeah, it's a good choice for Latin America.
Yeah.
And like I said, you're on the border, more or less open borders with two big countries next door. I think it's the best choice in South America. If I was going to choose in Central America, I would say Panama for a lot of different reasons. Costa Rica used to be really, really popular in the old days with Americans and Canadians. And of course, it's full of Americans and Canadians at this point. Not so crazy about Costa Rica. Mexico, that's interesting because, these, I think these are the possibilities right now in Latin America.
Yeah. And I think the important thing is that you have to you have to look at your personal risks, and make a choice that is the best available. And I think, kind of be flexible, because like the circumstances have changed a lot. I mean, a lot of people thought that our assumptions about where you ought to be in the world have changed. I mean, I think everyone's have, and that's likely to continue over the next couple of years. I don't see any way around it.
No, the whole world has become genuinely homogenized, where everything from entrance formalities, all these countries are going to eye scans, even backward, nothing, nowhere places in Africa are going to eye scans and fingerprints. That's the same everywhere. McDonald's are almost everywhere. The internet's almost everywhere. The whole world is becoming very, very homogenized. And all these governments are increasingly working together with each other. They're all buddy-buddy under the aegis of the UN and its agencies. So no, the world has changed radically just in my lifetime. I can tell you that.
I'll tell you one other thing I like about Uruguay is that the people in charge are not separated from the people in the same way that they are in a place like the United States. So, for instance, a friend of yours who you introduced me to is involved in, among other things, real estate in Uruguay. Like, she's like, I think she went to grammar school with the president.
Yeah.
Goes, no, he's a really nice guy. He's very good. He's very reasonable. And he's, and it's like when they are connected to the people, it's different. But now, of course, I know you did go to college with Bill Clinton, but like most people don't have never any connection whatsoever to the people who end up running our country.
No, none at all. So that's true of Uruguay. I mean, it's a democratic country in the good sense. In other words, that Uruguayans treat each other as equals. I mean, they don't see that there's a ruling class above them or anything like that. So yes, it's country's got some pluses.
Okay. All right. So here's a guy who said he's been saving precious metals for years. Now he's planning, he and his family are planning to move to his wife's hometown, which is very rural Japan, from Hawaii, where they are now. He says, I'm not sure what to do with my silver. Should I ship it, convert it to crypto, bury it, and make a pirate treasure map? How do you move a stash of silver in the 2,000 to 2,500 ounce range internationally?
Yeah, because you're talking about 150 pounds or something like that or more of actual silver. So you're not going to put it on a plane with you for all kinds of reasons. You do that. Look, I don't know what the import deal is bringing silver into Japan. These countries are all different. It's like, look, Singapore. If you bring in 100% gold coins, 999 gold coins, I understand, no problem. You bring in 90% gold coins, like American Eagles, problem. You've got a duty to pay. Most of these countries have duties on gold or duties on silver or one thing or another. So you're going to have to talk to the proper authorities to see what's possible to bring into Japan without paying a lot of money. And then the way to do it is you hire somebody like Brinks. You pay their fee and they just do it for you. So it's there when you get there. That's the only way to do it.
Exactly. Doug, do you know, have you ever heard of the Pilgrims Society?
Yeah, it's one of these cafe clutches between, the high and mighty, the rich and the powerful, and Brits and Americans who get together and talk about things you expect deep state guys to talk about, how they ought to rule the world, why it's a good thing, and how we can do it. Informal, just one of these groups where they get together like that Bohemian Grove thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, informal, to get together and do that. Or for that matter, Davos. I mean, no official power, but they all get together and play off each other's connections and that same kind of thing, just a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I hate them all.
I think that's the important point. Okay. So you can go as much into this as you want, but somebody says, I'd like to hear about how Doug accumulated his wealth. He has an interesting story about being cut off from inheritance twice, but they'd like to know more. What was your first fortune you made in mining stocks, et cetera? Just more curious about background stuff.
Yeah. Well, actually, mining stocks and small speculative stocks in general have been my huckleberry. And generally, and here's a tip. Here's the secret, okay? There's I don't know, a couple thousand, 3,000, I don't know, around the world. Most of them are listed in Canada, also in Australia, some in the US, some in the UK. But I've just played almost always with the Canadian stocks. And here's the thing. If you want to make money with these things, you've got to spend time on the ground and get to know all the players so you can size them up. Who are they? What kind of deals do they do? Number one. Number two, when the deals are done, you want to be in as close to the founders round as you can get. So you got the stock. You don't buy retail at 50 cents. You don't even buy in the first round at a dime. You buy at a penny or a tenth of a penny. Another tip, got to know the people. You got to bring something to the party. Why do they want to talk to you? And the third thing is when you're buying stocks that are already public, these things are black holes for money. They're always financing. They almost always need more money because they're exploring. They're not mining, which is when their problems really start. So you've got to do private placements. And private placements are really the only way to invest in these stocks, or speculate in them, I should say, because number one, when you do a private placement, it's almost always at a discount to the current market. Number two, there's almost always, or there should be, a warrant so that after you sell your underlying stock, if you choose to, you may or may not want to, you still have a lottery ticket for the upside for anywhere from, let's say, 2 years to maybe as many as 5 years. So, those things that I've just mentioned are how I got lucky in the markets.
And so, and a couple of the keys that just my observing of this from you is that you moved. This is a lot of these were on the Vancouver Exchange, and you moved to Vancouver for a period of time.
Exactly.
You became friends with a lot of the people that were in the business. You probably learned who the scoundrels were, and you learned who, the good guys were. And
yeah, exactly. I used to. I lived in West Vancouver. Had a great place on the water out there. It would take me 20 minutes to drive into Vancouver across the Lions Gate, and I'd go down most days, and I'd visit one or more promoters. And wonderful things would happen. I mean, this is what happens when you finally get wired into a coterie, a business. Like one of my favorite stories, this was funny. I was sitting in Peter Brown's office. Peter Brown runs, he doesn't anymore, but he used to run Canaccord, which was one of the very, very big and important stock firms up there. So we're talking, and in walks Murray Pezza, a name that probably nobody's going to listen to, but 20, 30 years ago, Murray was the big swinging Nick when it came to promoting stocks. And so Murray walks in and he starts talking to Peter, and, and I'm mostly listening to these guys because they had great stories. So I was just glad to be sitting there with Peter. And Murray starts to promote Peter on some deal. Murray had dozens of deals. And so Peter listens to the story. I listen to the story. And Peter says, yeah, okay, I'll take $100,000 worth of this. And I looked over at Murray because it was an inside deal. It was, one of those deals. And I said, Murray, what am I, chopped liver? And he says, oh, I'm sorry. Well, send me a check for $50,000. And I did. And what do you know? The stock came out and I, like quadrupled my money in a matter of months. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that can happen. Now, is that a hard work way to make money? I don't know, but
well, but and I think people want they want the result, but it's very easy to not understand the I wouldn't say risk necessarily, but with the uncertainty by which you went into, you didn't know that you were going to get, in these stock deals. But you knew that there were some interesting things happening there. There are interesting people there.
Exactly. And I made sure that I knew all the players and who they were. And I learned the basics of mining and all this type of thing. Otherwise, why do they want you sitting in a room with them? They don't. Okay. Right. Look, I remember, was this my first stockbroker or my second? I had very little money, but I had an account. I think he was with E.F. Hutton. And I was just a kid out of college. I knew nothing, frankly. And I actually asked the stockbroker, I says, look, I'd like one of those hot stocks. I know stocks are going up right now. This was during the Super Bowl market in '68 or something like that. And it was such a stupid question to ask. I'd like a hot stock. Well, everybody'd like a hot stock.
Yeah, of course.
And I caught myself, wait a minute, how much of an idiot am I asking a stockbroker for a hot stock? But look, you got to start someplace, okay?
Yep. Well, and one of the, I think that the speculative arena now, you see a lot of the speculative opportunity that exists within cryptos, but, people like cryptos and are interested in cryptos, but I wonder if people are actually doing the work, one, to understand the technology behind these different things, to come up with to understand how they work and why they might work. And are you going to where are the develop? And I know these guys are probably working remotely all over the world, but there are developers who are making this stuff. There are people who have the inside track to it. And I think that I guess there is a parallel, is all I'm saying, with certainly in the crypto space today with what you experienced in the mining space at that time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tout sheets. Now, the most popular tout sheets are not in mining stocks. Nobody cares about mining stocks right now, which is very interesting and very good. They care about cryptos. And I was reading a very popular tout sheet just the other night, and with all these different tokens and coins that this person's recommending, and none of it made any sense at all. No fundamentals. No, it was a racetrack tout sheet. In fact, not even the quality of a racetrack tout sheet. It's absolutely embarrassing. And people are paying thousands of dollars for this less than worthless advice. No, this is silly, Susan.
Yeah, you got to become an expert on this stuff yourself. You have to learn as much about it as you can and be around the people who really know about it. And they aren't the people who make money. They aren't the promoters, okay, of it. It's going to be, it probably is the developers or the people who've been around crypto for a really long time, and they've seen things, all the projects that have failed, and some of the ones that have succeeded, and the team, they know the teams that are behind the successful ones, and and the other projects they've done. So in any case, let's see. Next question, Doug. Do you have any insights or perspective on the smaller Mediterranean islands around Italy? Like, do you experience there?
No, not really. I mean, look, there's three big Mediterranean islands around Italy: Sicily, Corsica, and Sardinia. Okay. And you got little islands like the Isle of Capri. Okay, that's great. And I guess there's a bunch of really small ones. But I don't know. What are we going to do with that information?
Yeah, I know someone keeps asking. Someone has really wanted us to talk about it, but if you don't have any experience with any of them,
no. And what are you going to do when you get there? They're beach resorts, basically. Right. Okay, now what are you going to do on a beach resort with other tourists?
And especially when tourism might take a long time before tourism is again what it was in 2019.
And I think we remarked the last time that international flights have fallen 85% from 2019. That is a huge drop. And I'm not sure they're coming back for all kinds of different reasons.
Exactly. Doug, is there anything, as we've talked about Thailand a couple of times as a place in Asia that you like? Is there something, that's what's attractive to you about Thailand as a place to live?
Well, I love Thailand. I love the cuisine. I like the weather. The people are friendly. Why are they so friendly in Thailand? Maybe one reason is that it may be the only country in Asia that's never been conquered by Europeans. It's always been independent. And their culture really is different. All these cultures are different, but I like their culture. Thailand is a place to live in Asia. Absolutely my first choice.
Yeah, and Mark Faber lives in Chiang Mai, I believe. He's lived there for a long time, for instance.
Yeah, I lived in Chiang Mai for a while too. It's nice, although I like the islands in the south, but not too far south, because southern Thailand is full of Muslims, and there are bad things that happen whenever there's a Muslims. They're doing their thing with the jihad and all that in southern Thailand. But that said, I prefer the south to the north.
Okay, let's see. Do you have a view or an opinion on Finnish schools compared to Prussian style schooling that we have in the US and the UK?
Don't know anything about Finnish style schools.
Okay.
I know absolutely nothing about them. But I will say I don't like the Prussian style schools that we have here, where they're regimented, and the poor little kids have to sit in class 8 hours a day and do what they're told and learn by rote. So I don't know anything about Finnish schools, but they must be better.
They are better. They were ranked up until very recently. They were ranked amongst the best in the world, in terms of outcomes and for kids, and they're getting the actual education. So, I mean, that certainly went in their favor. But we did a podcast. Well, it must have been 4 months ago now, on John Taylor Gatto, and he really goes rails on this Prussian style school system.
I heard he died. Am I right?
Yeah, a couple of years ago he passed away. Yeah, unfortunately. The guy has a lot of great stuff to offer, and there's a lot of things on YouTube you can still find about him. And if you have kids that are at the age where they're being educated, I definitely encourage people to read one of his books or to watch one of his lectures, because he has a unique perspective and as a teacher himself. So let's see, Doug, have you ever been to Suriname? And what are your views on that country?
Have I been to Suriname? Yes, I have. In fact, I lived in Suriname for a month, and it was certainly one of the more interesting months that I've spent. I mean, I could go on talking about Suriname for a long time, but this podcast is not, tell me your adventures about Suriname. I was there. I mean, the way I got there and the people, the introductions I had and the people I met are a hell of a story. They really are. But I went to Suriname explicitly to talk to the government about my radical plan to free marketize the country and do all kinds of crazy things. And spent a lot of time socializing with Desi Boudersey, who was known as the commander, who was the dictator of the country at the time. That was interesting. And the was he still the Russian? Was he the Soviet ambassador, or was he then the Russian ambassador to Suriname? And all kinds of people down there. I met everybody in that country, and I've been down there subsequently, and it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot. It was really a backwater. There was like, in those days, there was like one flight from New York and maybe two flights from Amsterdam into Suriname every week. And that was about it. It's a different place now. So don't know why he asked, but weird place. I like it.
It's I can't remember which podcast it is, but you went into more detail about your story there in one of them, and not that much detail, but you got pretty far to pulling your deal together there. It's just kind of got really close.
Yeah, I really did. Well, maybe sometime when we're drinking and smoking cigars on this podcast again, I can regale listeners with that story.
We definitely should. I'm going to make a note of that, actually. And viewers, if you don't see this within the next couple of months from us, let us know, because I would like to see this version of the story too. I probably heard the clean and light version of it myself, so I'd be interested in the details. Let's see. Next question.
In fact, most of the guys, except for Boudersey himself, who's subsequently been indicted for murder, and I don't know if he's incarcerated now or not, but everybody else that was involved is dead. So I can certainly talk.
They're either murderers or dead.
Right.
All right. So let's see. Let's see. Someone's asking to watch a video. I don't like to do that. So someone says from Canada, say, I'm a financially independent guy in my late 20s, which is a remarkable situation to be in, first of all. Looking to settle part-time in a safe haven country. Panama and Uruguay seem to be good options, but I have doubts about both due to Latin America's socialist tendencies and overall crime situation. I guess we've already talked about this for the most part, but if you have anything to add, what is your take on both countries and their future trajectory in crime and socialism over the next 10 to 20 years? So those specific things within Panama and Uruguay, the increase in crime and socialism over the next 10 to 20 years. Do you have any opinion on that?
I'd say that crime is basically a non-problem in Uruguay. It's actually a very peaceful, mellow little country. I'd say the most peaceful and mellow in Latin America. That's what I think. And Panama, I guess it depends on where you live, in the mountains, on the beach, in Panama City. But look, I've had very good luck everywhere with crime. I mean, I don't think I've ever, anywhere been subjected to a mugging or a robbery or anything like that. Maybe I'm just blessed somehow, or just really lucky, or maybe there's just a hysteria about these things where people are afraid that if they go 5 miles over the next hill, there might be dragons, so you better stay in your little village, wherever that may be in the world. So
if someone asked almost the exact same question, really, they're asking, if you've ever been, the victim of robbery, theft, or fraud by locals, and if so, share some details on that. I will say that, I've definitely witnessed crime in a couple of places, in Argentina, certainly.
Yeah.
But it's a petty theft. But I mean, they're actually professionals at stealing your watch off your wrist.
Yeah.
I mean, really good at that. I mean, they did that to my ex-wife. They did it to Nicholas Sparks, who I was there with. I mean, they did it. Like they're good at it. Or not, it wasn't Nick. It was another one in our group. But Nick actually caught him and tackled the guy. This is the romance author. Amazing.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been lucky. I've certainly heard stories firsthand from people that stuff has happened to. And when it comes to fraud, listen, fraud is always a problem. I'll tell you an interesting story. Uh, I met Sir John Templeton, who died, I don't know, 10 years or something like that ago. And in his office in Lyford Key in the Bahamas. And we were talking about, he had a copy, incidentally, I'm very proud of this. He had a copy of my book, The International Man, on his bookshelf in back of him. So he was actually, of all people, Sir John Templeton was interested in talking to me. I was just thrilled, obviously. So we were talking, and we'd had a conference he wasn't at it, but we'd had a conference in Costa Rica because, as I think I mentioned earlier, Costa Rica used to be really popular for expats to go to at one point, mostly during the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. So anyway, I mentioned, we had the vice president of the country talk to people at the conference. And he said, and Templeton says, yeah, I know that guy. He was my lawyer when I bought some real estate, and he swindled me out of $200,000 worth of land. Now, what's interesting is that how did I know that we had a swindler as a lawyer who was vice president of Costa Rica talking, the same one that swindled Templeton, and somebody that's as worldly wise and internationally experienced and smart as Templeton got swindled out of $200,000, which in those days would have been more like $1 million. It just goes to show. Yeah, you got to watch out for these lawyers, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Who was it? Al Capone or Lucky Luciano? One of those guys said, one man with a pen can steal more than 10 guys with submachine guns.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of people assume that, that a lawyer operating in a foreign country is almost automatically somebody that you can trust. Like, people wouldn't imagine that a lawyer here would do that, although certainly plenty of them do. But there, it's almost like, a lot of people are trying to look for ways around things. They're looking for easy ways to get stuff done, and lawyers can make promises, and you just trust that they'll be okay because they're lawyers and they know the law, and so why wouldn't it be a problem? But those guys are in a unique position to swindle you. So
they are
actually the most likely party to do it, frankly.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what your defense against that is, other than knowing lots of people and getting good introductions. Barring that, probably you're better off dealing with the biggest and most expensive law firm. Yep. Probably, but who knows?
Okay, let's see. Next question. Let's see. The question is about Afghanistan. Is just wondering what our thoughts are on how it could be taken over so quickly. Many seem quite surprised by that, and then they say, but he thinks that he says, I see similar process in the West. For example, my own neighborhood has recently been taken over by a drug gang, young men with immigrant background. What has really surprised me is that they have not been met with any resistance from the residents. We have a Facebook group, we're trying to fight it off. So he says, have Western men been destroyed? Because the natural response if a gang moves in and turns your area into a shithole would be to group together and eliminate the problem. But it seems not to happen. Is there something about us that's changed? Have we become too comfortable?
That's a very good question. Very interesting and realistic question. I guess my response would be, yeah, probably. I mean, Western men have, because of the education indoctrination system, there's been a tendency to turn them into soy boys. So yeah, that's part of it. But a big part of it is that the state is so overreaching. And if you defend yourself today, the chances are better you're going to be prosecuted more vigorously than the criminal that you're fighting against. So, gee, there's nothing like a little bit of Old West justice where you see the bad guys there and you get together with your crew and frankly, you kill them. I mean, I think that's a pretty good solution. It's vigilante justice and so forth. Yeah, I know all the problems. I see where that can devolve into. I understand all that. But yeah, you can't do that anymore because the state is more dangerous than the criminal gang you're trying to get rid of, in addition to the soy boy problem. So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, maybe you gotta hope that a Charlie Bronson arises from among your group.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing is even the group dynamic. I think the connections within the neighborhood aren't what they used to be either. I mean, I definitely don't know all my neighbors around me now where I am. And, and I just compare and contrast the way that's been in different places I've lived over my life. The neighborhood where I was born, which I was, I guess, there until maybe only second grade, but I can still visually go down the street and tell you the name of every person who lived there. And I knew their profession. And I remember that from when I was 6 or 7, but I don't know. I don't know the person that's like 200 meters from me. I have no idea who they are. I don't know what their name is. I have no idea what they do.
You're right. Me too. Same thing.
So it's a lot harder for you to mount any kind of actual, at least even just saying, hey, we don't want you in our neighborhood. Doing it one at a time is risky. But if the whole neighborhood came out and goes, you got to go. This is not like, move 2 blocks that way and we'll be okay with you. But like, you got to get out of here. You can't even do that anymore because you don't know.
No, you can't do that anymore. And worse than that, if it looks like you're going to go Charlie Bronson on these guys, chances are your neighbors today will rat you out to the authorities. So
that's right.
Not a good situation. That's
exactly right. Yep. So I think our society has changed, and Western men have probably changed as well. But I think that there are plenty of men that would, that still would behave in the way that we would imagine, a man ought to respond to conflict and things. But the society doesn't tolerate it. I mean, there was an example not long ago where there was some guy going through a neighborhood, and apparently, the claim was that this black guy, that he assaulted or sexually grabbed some woman, and this guy was a sergeant in the army. Says you don't belong in this neighborhood, meaning, and it came off like, oh, because of your kind or something. But it seemed he meant we know our neighbors. You're not here. Why get the hell out of here? And he put his hands on him to turn him around and tell him he's got to go. And he was, first a bunch of protesters came and protested outside of his house, and then he was charged with assault. And I don't know if he was kicked out of the army, but it was a guy who's trying to do the right thing, Yeah. So, and this is what happens. So,
no, you got to be very, very careful about doing the commonsensical right thing anymore. I mean, I guess what you're supposed to do is go into your house and shelter in place so that you can be safe and everybody else can be safe.
Right.
I mean, it's just disgusting. At this point, America is so corrupt, it actually deserves to collapse. I'm so disgusted with it.
I agree. Okay, let's see. What is okay. I'm not sure I even want you to answer this one. But what does Doug think about, quote, going out in a blaze of glory? Suppose someone has a terminal illness and decides to do something crazy for the common good, or has just had enough of life. Has Doug ever considered something like this? Is it better to get away with, to go away quietly, or with some type of altruistic insanity?
Well, we certainly don't want to encourage that kind of thinking.
No.
But listen, I had a very good friend, and he was actually, in many ways, the godfather of the newsletter publishing business back in the 70s. And Bob related to me, and this is the truth. He said, I hope when it comes time for me to die, he says, I hope that I've got some kind of a dread disease like cancer. So I know I've got like 3 months to live. And then I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, which was some pretty radical stuff. And, I thought that, well, okay, that's great. But here's what actually happened to Bob. He did get cancer, and he did know that he had X number of months to live. And when time came to, to walk the walk, no, he didn't do that. He did all kinds of extraordinarily kind of dumb stuff to get a few ratty extra months of his life. So it's easy to talk this way, but when it comes time to do it, I don't know. So don't think thoughts like that, because you might manifest them, as the hippies say.
Well, there's also the basic thing that it's not clear. I mean, when you are personally being attacked, and it's like it's obvious you're being attacked, an act of self-defense, or if you see is obvious, like you know what self-defense is in that situation, or if you see somebody, I remember being at a parking lot one day, and this guy just started assaulting his girlfriend, wife, or whatever, so like. I intervened in that a little bit, but it was clear, like he was hurting her, and I might be able to carefully try and like diffuse it or stop it or something. But as soon as you take it out of those very specific, like right in front of you circumstances, you could think that you're doing something good, and actually you're not, because it's not like it's hard to even identify what exactly the problem is, or what's the linchpin that might make things better. And in fact,
maybe the two of them just get off on fighting each other, and you break it up, and they both decide to sue you later.
That's possible.
Call the cops, and you're arrested. I mean,
possible.
It's too bad we live in that kind of world. But maybe the best thing to do is just Fido, fuck it, drive on.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that, but I'm just trying to discourage people from thinking of, trying to, going out in a blaze of glory, like that idea. I just think is you don't even know who your enemy is.
No,
you don't even know what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And I think, and in fact, I believe based upon 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, the administration releasing this plan to deal with domestic terrorism. I mean, literally, you would be doing them an incredible favor by doing something like that, and it would cause untold harm to the rest of us who are actually just trying to build a life and and get past all the shitstorm that's that we're already experiencing. So I mean, I get that.
Yeah, you got to be careful about that. And in addition to the fact that the people that we think are the bad guys, in fact, I'm sure they're the bad guys, they think they're the good guys, and they're sure we're the bad guys. I mean,
it's perverse.
I mean, it's not as easy as the final scene in my favorite movie, The Wild Bunch.
Right. Well, in that they all die, though, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But that scene where the four guys walk down the street to confront the bandits. I mean, that was a great scene. Spectacular movie making on the part of Sam Peckinpah. I mean, I feel like I got to see that movie every year. Well, okay, if you can get yourself into a Wild Bunch kind of situation, but Sam Peckinpah isn't in charge of manufacturing our lives, so it probably wouldn't work out that neatly.
Probably wouldn't. Let's see. Next question. What advice would Doug give to those of us who have lost friendships and had family relationships fractured over the last 18 months? Should this experience actually be considered a good thing as a type of cleansing to weed those people out of your life? I mean, this is something you and I talked offline about actually quite a bit lately. Yeah.
Well, my answer to that is absolutely. I mean, it's great when some deus ex machina can come in and crystallize the problem with another person, which might be hidden just under a couple layers of social veneer. Now you know what kind of person you're dealing with, you know what their basic values are, which may not have ever come out because all you've ever done in the past is talk to them about the weather and the state of the roads. And so this crystallizes things. And yeah, once the enemy displays his colors, distance yourself. I mean, I don't want to be around people like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good thing.
It is a good thing. I mean, our life has been so easy for Americans, frankly, and for so long that we haven't really been able to see what people are really made of. And this test that we've had over the last 18 months is minor in comparison to the historical tests that humanity has faced. And we're lucky in many ways that we've been able to like remove people from our lives who, or they have been able to remove us from their lives who just simply disagree fundamentally with them.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
So let's see. What do you think will happen to those emerging market companies or nations with US dollar denominated debt when the debt bubble finally pops? Is it going to be another 1980s Latin American crisis, or do you think their debts would be inflated away when the potential US dollar devaluation follows afterwards?
Well, look, if I was running a country that had a lot of US dollar denominated debt during a crisis, I'm the government, which is an illegitimate entity to start with, I'd default on all of it, frankly. What do you expect? You lend money to a government, you're going to get what you deserve. And I wouldn't want to basically turn my people into serfs to pay off the crony capitalists that have lent money to the previous regimes who've basically stolen or misallocated the whole thing. And people will say, that's not a good capitalist. You can't steal money from people like that. Hey, you posit. I think we're positing a government, and well, that's what I would do if I was running a government that was in that kind of a situation. But it won't happen because the individuals running these dog shit countries, they will be intimidated personally and threatened personally if they are complicit in things like that. And they're all socialist systems, and they can't afford to be cut off from the. So I don't know what's going to happen. You can just count on most of these currencies reaching their intrinsic value sooner or later, sooner at this point.
Okay, let's see. You've already answered that question before. What do you think of peak oil theory? Given prevalence of fraud in the world today, does Doug think that the current world oil reserves could be overstated?
Well, peak oil theory, there was a geologist named M. King Hubbard, and he wrote an article. The way this became popular, he wrote an article, how long ago was this? 25 years? I don't know, in Scientific American. I read that article, incidentally. I had a subscription at the time. And what he basically said was this. I mean, peak oil theory is misstated a lot of the time. Basically, he said that easily available, cheap, light, sweet crude is gone. That's what he said. And since then, people have been saying, well, we're going to run out of oil. We're going to run out of oil. Well, he didn't say that. He said, light, sweet, easily available crude is gone. And he's right. People have been exploring for oil long enough that they found all the big, shallow, nice deposits. I'm not talking about tar sands in Alberta or heavy oil in Venezuela. He was well aware that just technology can dig that stuff out and so forth. So what do I think of it? The price mechanism solves all these things. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Why are so many very rich people woke? Do they believe in this crap, or is it a strategy to disempower ordinary people?
Hmm. Well, that's interesting. Is it a power to disempower ordinary people? Yes, it is, because the ordinary people are going to get screwed. But I don't know if that's really on their minds. Look, I think that people in the upper classes, in the elite, are educated at places where they're thoroughly indoctrinated with this bullshit. So, they basically actually believe it, and they hang out with other people that profit from it and believe it. So I'm not sure it's a conspiracy at all. It's just, it just makes sense. It's a good way to dominate.
Okay. Let's see. Why do you think people are so afraid of being labeled conspiracy theorists and other colorful epitaphs by the left?
Because there actually are a lot of people that believe irrational things, that actually do wear tinfoil hats.
No.
And they repeat memes that they picked up on the internet, which have no logical or scientific basis in fact, and they don't have the education to parse it out and see, gee, could it be true or not true? I mean, I'll look at absolutely any kind of a proposition, but it's got to make sense. And are there more Looney Tunes on the right from that point of view than on the left? Gee, I don't know. But conspiracy theorists. Well, on the one hand, you got to talk, well, are there a lot of conspiracies? Yeah, I think there's lots of conspiracies. Everybody conspires. I mean, Adam Smith wrote about the fact that at any meeting, when two or more members of the same business get together, they immediately conspire on, how they can take advantage of the public. This is just natural. Of course they do. And so what? So there's conspiracies all the time, but at the same time, it's hard to conspire when you're dealing with scores or hundreds, or in the case of something like this current COVID psychosis, thousands of people. I mean, how do you get them all to agree on something? Because they're all miscreants that are dishonest and stupid. So how do you get them to all sing the same song? It's pretty hard. I mean, I can't even, if we still went to movies, I couldn't even get four people to figure out what movie and then what restaurant we're going to go to. Talk about a complex conspiracy with criminals. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. No answers to that question that I know of.
It's really even easier to influence broad swaths of people, influence the way that they think, influence the things that they're afraid of, influence, the things that they see valuable as a society. That's easier, I think, than trying to, that there's people lying, you know what I mean? Like running a game on people. Like, let me give you an example. There was in our Telegram group that we have, there was somebody shared a video of, it might be a health minister from Australia, but this guy who, as he's in one of the videos, he has an eye that's drooping. And, commenters on the video said, man, it looks like this guy's got like his eyes drooping. It's really weird. It looks like he's got, like, there's something wrong with him. And, he went and checked, and it turns out that he has Bell's palsy, which is one of the symptoms that has been identified by the CDC and others and associated with, although they say very rare, with vaccines. And someone in our Telegram group said, wait, like they actually believe the things that they're saying, like that everyone needs to be vaccinated. And I said, yes. I mean, I think most of the people that are pushing these ideas, and you alluded to this earlier, they believe that they're right. They believe that it's good. They don't even believe that they're, that they say they think the vaccines are safe and effective. Like, they actually, when they say that, they mean it for the most. I really do believe that most of them mean it, and they could be completely wrong. But that it's a lot easier to convince people of an idea, actually, than it is to try and get them to run a game on a whole other set of the population. Don't you think?
I do. And once you convince people of an idea, they're invested in it. And it's much harder to unconvince them of the idea than it is to convince them of it to start with.
Exactly.
And most people have been convinced that the next step is to have carts going through the streets saying, bring out your dead, bring out your dead, from something that's basically indistinguishable from a common flu. So this is absolutely crazy. It's actually mass psychosis on a level with the witch hysteria, or the witch psychosis of the late 16th, early 17th centuries, or the Great Cultural Revolution, or something like that.
That's what it reminds me of a lot. And I saw there was another video clip I saw on Twitter or in our Telegram group. I can't remember. And it was, and by the way, if you're not in our Telegram group, I encourage you to just join it. If you have the app on your phone or on your computer, it's easy to do.
How do you do that incidentally? I'm not on the group because
I'll show you separately so you can do it.
This shows my amount of interest with beyond using my computer as a typewriter or something.
I know, but most people can figure it out, but I'll show you, and maybe I should link to some instructions for people who don't know. But it's pretty simple.
There's probably other people like me out there that
probably are
don't know and actually don't care. Well, vaguely care.
Yeah, well, it's just a group where like we could talk to each other in case, like if our channel were blacklisted, for instance, we publish on something called Odyssey, which is a decentralized video network, but we also have this Telegram group, and so that we could publish there, and we have an email list, and just it's just basic backup options essentially. But
we have a link under our videos that
all the videos.
Yep. Oh, very good. Okay.
So if you haven't done it, people, what's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. So the thing about it is they had this video of this teacher who was saying, telling her students, saying, your parents are dumber than you are. Your parents don't really know what's right. Donald Trump is stupid. This is just quotes from this person. This is what they said. And and I'm just like, this is, so if people have studied at all the Cultural Revolution, what they would see is that these are statements that Mao was saying publicly about the teachers. He said, your teachers act like they know everything, but they don't. They don't know any more than you know. Like and he was just in the same sort of bad mouthing, but it was toward the teachers. That the result of that was that the students ultimately beat, certainly shamed, and sometimes, not frequently, murdered their teachers. Like that kind of talk among students is crazy. But I think people have it sounded exactly like it, but people have no understanding of history to understand what's happening.
No, that's right. There's a good sci-fi novel. It's quite good. Called The Three-Body Problem by a Chinese author, where, to start out with, he talks about instances like that during the Great Cultural Revolution. Just to toss away.
It's a great book.
But well, anyway, it's perverse because in today's world, where most teachers are more like this moron that you were just discussing, been teachers that are actually kind of impart knowledge. Gee, I guess it would be correct for some.
I know.
Well, the whole thing, we're living in a bizarre world where everything is upside down.
It is.
And the only answer is to analyze everything that somebody says and question it and ask them to explain the why and so forth. So you can say, is there any truth to that? She says, your parents are wrong. Well, I'd like you to explain exactly how. I'm not interested in a general assertion of your opinion, which I expect is worthless. I'd say to the teacher, if I had the nerve, which kids don't, of course. Anyway, it's critical thinking, and it doesn't exist anymore.
No, I mean, my daughter was writing a book report last night for something she had to do for school. It was summer reading, and it was had a left-wing slant to history. And so as she was writing it, I told her, I'm like, you really should insert the word allegedly there, because it's like, this is a claim that's being made in this book, but like there's no, it's not supported with a lot of evidence from what you're telling me. So like just like add allegedly, and then watch your teacher when you say it. Like it'll be interesting to see
Oh,
how they respond.
did she do that? Did she?
She said she would think about it. So,
Think
so
about
I don't know. We'll see. I mean,
why does she have to think about it? I mean, she
she's
thinks it's actually. I know you can get into
does
those.
it. She agreed with me, but she was like, I don't know if I want to well, because her older brother has a bad reputation with that teacher because
Mhm.
he did say things like that a lot.
Well,
And so she's like, I'm not sure I want to start the year with this guy that just with him just seeing me as a mini Max is what she said actually.
what's on the other hand? Hey, what do you got to lose? What's he going to do? Send you off to a FEMA camp? Well, strike that.
Possible. Yeah, exactly. So, well, so let me just, I guess, summarize with one last thing or one last question. As I asked this Telegram group right before this, I was like, what are people most worried about? Like, what's most preoccupying you, or what's the biggest kind of thing on your mind? And what a lot of people said that they were most worried about just had something to do with the idea that there does seem to be a resurgence of COVID cases. It's like hyped in the news with the Delta variant and all this stuff. And I think people are worried about renewed and even stronger lockdowns and border controls and stuff like that. And I thought it'd be worthwhile to get your thoughts on that.
Well, as far as a resurgence of cases and the Delta variant and God knows what, this whole subject has become so highly politicized, so more politicized than anything I can think of in my lifetime, where there's blackouts on news, there's no discussion allowed, you can't be sure of the accuracy of something, you can't be sure if it's reported, if all kinds of relative mitigating factors. We don't know anything. All we have is allegations that talking heads, program monkeys, tell us on television. So, I mean, we don't even know what the facts are.
Right.
Like I said, I don't see the carts with the driver saying, bring out your dead, bring out your dead. In fact, to the contrary, nothing like that.
But what about the response to what is being reported? I think it's like the state, however the disease is, the fact is that the state has instilled draconian tactics before, and currently in the U.S. in different places, or currently around the world in different places. I mean,
well, look, all I can tell you is what I do, and I don't wear a mask anywhere. And if they ask me, if the proprietor of the shop or whatever asked me to put one on, hey, it's his shop. So he makes the rules. Try to avoid his shop in the future because I'm obviously dealing with a moron. But I don't know. What can you do about this? I mean, I guess it's our friend Paul Rosenberg, who we interviewed in the past. Paul's a believer in setting up parallel channels where, as much as you can, you let these people do what they want and live their own lives. And, you work with people that are like-minded in a different channel. Mm-hmm. So you can avoid conflict.
Yep.
Because I generally like to avoid conflict. It usually ends badly one way or another when you get into actual conflict with people. But
especially, it's especially when it's clearly a rising tide, and
it is a rising tide.
Waves. I mean, what are you going to do?
We're on the wrong side of history right now.
We are.
And unfortunately, we're not much more than a rounding error. And as a group, we're getting smaller. Maybe some Deus Ex Machina device will come along and it'll turn out that absolutely massive amounts of these vaccine takers, hopefully the most enthusiastic ones that had 2 or 3 shots, get really sick. And they can't, well, they'll try to blame it on the people that didn't get vaccines, of course. But other than that, I don't know what we can do.
Yeah. And so but I guess the question about border controls and new lockdowns, do you anticipate that this fall, as we get into the normal flu season, the normal cold season, do you anticipate those be like making a resurgence in the US?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I mean, the lunatics are in control of the asylum, and they have all of the means of power from Washington, D.C. down to your local county commissioners. Um, those are the kind of people that get into political office. I mean, they can round you up, they can put you in jail, and I don't know what we do about it other than just passively resist and mock them.
Yeah. Yeah. And recognize that you might be, that if there is a renewed lockdown, that, you don't want to be amongst the hordes of people rushing to the grocery store, or, having to, will find yourself in large hysterical crowds. I mean, you want to make sure that you are prepared and, immune to that as much as possible.
Yeah. It's like when I get back down to Uruguay, I mean, if they're locked down at the time, I mean, my housekeeper, who's not very nice, very decent human being, but kind of a do as she's told citizen, she'll go out and get the groceries and all that. I won't hopefully be inconvenienced until this thing blows over.
Yeah.
Same thing here in the US. I mean, you want to put yourself in a position where you can avoid getting caught in a shitstorm.
I think that's a good rule in general. So I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. And we'll be back next week.
Okay, thanks, Matt.